Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Hey, everybody, so excited today to welcome a debut novelist. We have author Joanne Howard joining us to talk about a historical fiction novel called Sleeping in the Sun. It's out now through She Writes Press. And go get it. Go to joannehowardwrites.com. And I think this is so cool that we can interview her and talk about it before October ends, because October is National Book Lovers Month and it is also Family History Month. And part of her novel does tie into her family history. And we're going to talk about colonialism in India, right? Joanne, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about my book with you.
Yeah, I think you got to be one of the younger novelists that have been on our show. Do you hear that
Okay,
often?
exciting.
Do you hear that?
Sometimes, yeah, definitely. In my MFA creative writing program tended to be a bit older than me, but you got to follow your dream whenever you can. So, and this is when it makes sense for me, I guess.
And this is part of it. Your thesis ended up into a novel. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I started it. If you want to get into the journey of how
Yeah,
the book
yeah,
began, yeah.
yeah.
I started it in 2016 as part of my master's program in creative writing at Pacific University, which is in Oregon. And it really got such a strong start there because, especially for a debut novelist who's never done this before, you really have no idea where to start. But with this program, it went through pretty uh, rigorous editing and editing with my faculty
Mm.
members there who are very brilliant but tough. So got a good start. But then after that, the program was only 2 years. So after that, I still had another maybe like 4 or so years to finish the book. That's how long it took me, like 6 years total about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I wrote all along the way, just being a copywriter professionally. So I found
Mm.
little pockets of time to work on the book as I worked my
It's
career.
like a little jump of joy. Yeah, this is mine.
Yeah,
It's all mine. But
yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really interesting doing it from doing it in a scholarly side where you have all these people that can help you along the way, because I don't think a lot of authors had that. You know what I mean? It's kind of you
Yeah.
need to go out and hire editors, and editing is crucial, right? Don't you think? It's kind
Mm.
of like if you don't
Oh,
have
of
the editor,
course.
it's and I mean not editing on grammar. We have programs for that.
Mm. Right. No, yeah. I think, that's one of the maybe the plus side of doing this so young as I was. I wasn't too far out of my undergrad college program at
Mm.
UCSB where I got my bachelor's in English. So I think just like being so close to the college experience then, like it just made sense to go for a master's, and there wasn't like a big steep like learning curve and being a student again like that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, I think I
Yeah.
was just in that mindset of, just being academically like committed to this book.
Well, but I mean, this tied into your family. So where did it all start for you when you said, "Oh, this needs to be a book"? Were you digging family
Yeah.
history, like, because it takes you over to India, and this is
Mm.
quite an interesting story, and I think it goes beyond history. It goes into how humans are.
Yeah, yeah. So this all started one Thanksgiving with my family, my Howard side, and I always knew that my grandpa had was born and raised in India. He growing up as a kid, I remember him making these like Indian feasts, and he would
Mm.
make like toys for us. He was really like a Renaissance man who just made so much stuff with his hands, and he would have like little like he would write my name in Bengali like on some of the toys.
Oh,
And so I always knew that he had this like background from India, but one Thanksgiving was really like the first time that we really like dove into the details of life
mhm.
there. So we took out like all these autobiographies and memoirs and photographs from various family members, and fortunately, like a lot of relatives who lived in India wrote extensively about their time there, and we have that all
Wow,
preserved. So there was all this like built-in information right at my fingertips. So,
that's
but
awesome.
Yeah, I really just was so struck by the vibrant details of life there. Like in the book, it made it into the book, but this scene of a funeral procession walking by the house like one early morning, and it's so colorful and um, just like such a striking visual. And that was one example of one of the details in these diaries and autobiographies. So yeah, just life in
Mm,
India just seemed so cinematic to me, and
mm,
thought I would
yeah.
make a story out of it if I could.
I was kind of like that as a young girl, and I was living in South Africa, but was raised in my like little kid years in Kenya. Then we went to England for about a year and a half, then South Africa. And so we had a lot of different Indian friends, Hindu, Muslim, different, sides. And sometimes you don't put them in the same room. Just saying. By the way, this is airing on Halloween because it is also Diwali. So, and if you've
Okay,
celebrated
exciting.
Diwali, you know that you get good food, right? Have you celebrated Diwali at all? Have you ever
I
tasted all the
haven't.
treats?
No, no.
Oh man, this is a celebration. It's a feast. And if you have Indian friends, you're excited about
Yeah,
Diwali.
yeah.
Okay, so
Mm,
I'm
the
just
Indian
saying
sweets
this is
are on another level. Yeah.
it is. But you know, it is so cool because like when I remember having a babysitter, and I think I was like 8 years. I can't remember where I was when. And she got me interested in reading trade winds and gosh, MMK is the author. And
Yes, the Far Pavilions.
for our pavilions. Did you read
Hmm.
all that? See, I got
Oh
all into
yeah,
this as a
that's
kid.
one of my favorite books.
No
Yeah.
way. You're the only person I know
Yeah.
other than my mom that
Oh
didn't see
no,
that.
it's fantastic.
It doesn't it take
It's
it
such a
sweeps you
shame that
away. Yeah.
yeah, it's such a shame that it has kind of fallen out of popularity because at one point I think there are like millions of copies sold of that book,
Hmm.
but I
She
guess it
was
was just so
huge.
long ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
as a kid, I read those and I like feasted upon them because exactly what you're saying, the procession. And I remembered this one scene, and don't ask me anything about the books now, but like being there, their donkey would come outside the window in the morning, like the early morning, like you're talking about. There are
yeah.
certain things, like even in Cape Town in South Africa, you'd wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, and it would be the Muslim time of prayer, and everybody would go there, and it was
Mm,
just this. I don't know. I don't. It this just other way of life that is festive, no matter
yeah.
the belief system.
Hmm.
Hindu,
Exactly.
Muslim, everything. Everyone's doing something different, but there's color, there's vibrancy, and MMK took me away as a little girl, and the pet sitter, I'm a pet sitter, babysitter. She used to sit there and tell me these stories of growing up in India, and she was a white lady, and she was like, no, she just she would sit there. She was an elder lady, and just regale me with these tales, and I didn't care what she was telling me about. I was just so into it. And I think she loved it because, she was reliving her childhood in India, you
Wow.
know.
Yeah. Oh, that's so
Hmm.
amazing. Yeah, I love that book, The Far Pavilions. I highly recommend it. I remember
I'm gonna
just
have to
reading like
reread it now.
the first like 100 pages felt like so much happens in it. And it's such a whirlwind of adventure, that book, that whole
Mm.
book. Yeah.
I know
Mhm.
people are comparing your book to the Poisonwood Bible, which I've also read from Barbara Kingsolver, which,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah,
because of
it's
the
definitely
colonialism, yeah, that gets in there big,
mm.
right?
And yeah, and the missionaries and yeah, yeah. Of course, like, Barbara Kingsolver is such an amazing author and the prose in that book is just so incredibly like
You go
smart
back
and
and
intelligent
you keep
genius, but
rereading it. You keep rereading it. But
mm,
I don't want to get into too many comparisons. I want you to just give us a little bit of an overview of the story in the book because it's like, unseeming characters are all put together.
sure, yeah. So it follows a an American missionary family in India. It's set in the 1930s, which is a decade before India gains independence. The setting is the town of Midnapore, which is just outside of Calcutta. And the main character is Gene Hinton, who is the youngest boy, and he just kind of has a tough time with three older, rambunctious outgoing brothers, and he just kind of wants to find peace in his life. And
Mm,
he seems to only be able to relate to Arthur, who is the family's only Indian servant. And Arthur kind of has his own uh, identity crisis, kind of, when a friend of his questions, you have devoted your whole life to serving this American family and you haven't really done anything for yourself. you
mhm,
know, Maybe it's time to build your own life somehow. And so Arthur kind of thinks back on how much he has devoted to this family. And he's never really thought of that before because he thinks of
mhm,
the American missionaries as somewhat good people, but they also, you know, are not his friends. They're not
mhm,
equals and they're not very personal with him. So he's very conflicted, I think, about the way he sees them. And then the catalyst for the action is when the high-ranking British judge Ellis comes to visit them, and he is a family friend to the Hintons. And the circumstances about his visit are mysterious, and Jean is the only one seemingly to wonder why this important man is visiting this very humble family.
mm,
So both Jean and Arthur kind of do their own digging and reveal some secrets about the judge and the
mhm.
family. Yeah.
Ooh. No, no spoilers allowed. So it touches on your family history with your grandfather, right? So you
Hmm.
read some of his work. Did you ever go to India to do some research
Yeah.
and get the feel for it?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I went in 2018. I went with my dad
Mm,
and my sister and my boyfriend, and we went
mhm,
to Calcutta, and Midnapore. So we saw the church, the missions church is still there. And then we saw
mm,
the street that the house was on, but the house is no longer standing. We visited Howrah Station, which is the train station in Calcutta, and
mhm.
just got a feel for like the atmosphere of the place. And then we traveled all around India, but those were the places that appear in the novel. Yeah.
Yeah, what did you think? How does it feel to go like in your ancestors' footsteps? When you think about, I mean, at least you'd met your grandfather, you knew him, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
so that's familiar, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what to expect, I think, because my grandpa had a bit of a difficult, conflicting idea of India because he actually never returned when he left India. So most of the boys left India to go to college in the US. So my grandpa was 18 or somewhere around there when he left India, and he never went back because he always said, the India of his youth like wouldn't be there anymore, and he wanted to kind of preserve his memory. So I think he had
Mm,
like fond memories of India, and I think it would be overwhelming to see such a change, decades and decades later. So I didn't know what to
understood.
expect, but yeah, it was certainly India is very overwhelming if you like don't do
Hmm.
any research. I
A
think
lot of
it's
people.
just it's just such an extreme, I think. Like, you're going to see some like really extremely beautiful places and amazing food and like very outgoing people, but you'll also probably see, a bit of poverty or
Hmm.
sanitation issues and stuff like that. And if you're not really prepared and you don't go in open-minded, then it can be like really quite a shock because it is very different from at least my life in California. Yeah.
Mm. Sure, sure. No, no. And I think also having so many people in such close proximity
Hmm.
is a different thing for folks, especially in the West, right? You're used to like
Yeah,
wide open
yeah.
spaces. And then all of a sudden it's like so many
Exactly.
people. Kenya was very much like that. You get on a bus and I mean, you could have two people sitting on you, and
Yeah,
chickens,
yeah.
you know, what I mean? It could be
Yeah.
like that. So it's kind of similar. I've not done India yet, but I want to go
Mm.
because I don't know. There's just something very ancient about it. I think about our medical system coming from there, the Vedic scriptures and everything, that there's just something deep, deep, deep about India, deep about
Spiritual. Yeah.
Africa. Yeah. I mean, and then
Hmm.
Asia too. You got to put them all, well, India and Asia, whatever, everybody changes names and things, but it's all connected, I think,
Sure.
for some reason. There's just this
Yeah, I hope you
ancientness.
I hope you go. Yeah, I certainly would do your research. I think it
Hmm.
would be a tough place to go in blind without any expectations, but yeah, I hope you can
Yeah.
go someday.
Would you go back?
I think so. Yeah, I think I think it will challenge you because it's not a place that you can really like stroll and get lost in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you do have to kind of keep your wits about you as a foreigner. But it's very rewarding if you're willing to kind of put in like the mental work of being a
Hmm.
traveler in such a like high sensory kind of place. It's very rewarding. Yeah, I'd go
So
again.
what about colonialism? Now you've gone there, what, almost like 100 years later, right? Almost, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So colonialism still kind of rings in, it kind of, it's not all gone, right? So doing your history, researching that, um, gosh, colonialism is such a weird thing, man. It's just I mean, I remember when as a little girl in Kenya, and we lived in the bush first with different tribes and then came out and had to go to the city, as you call it. And we lived in a place called Karen, which is out of Karen Blixen. If you ever read, or, Karen Blixen had the tea farms, and Out of Africa was made out of off of her story in the movie. And so we lived
I
on
didn't know
one
that.
part of it, actually in her servants' quarters, but it was like refurbished as this beautiful cottage that you would never know, what happened. And then so we're in this neighborhood, and there was British and a few Americans, and it was weird. And we didn't, well, especially my mom did not go with this whole thing of like everybody comes to tea, la di da. We're Americans, so we're a little bit more brash. And then they ring the bell, and people, the servants come around, and my mom did. Nancy did not do well with the ring of the bell and the etiquette things that go with this. And you were kind of pushed into having housekeepers, and then when she did, she invited them to have dinner with her. that that didn't go very well, and it made everybody uncomfortable, everybody, because you're not supposed to be that communal on either side. It was just a weird thing. So in your research, did you come across those kind of oddities? Because it kind of feel like a little bit of what
Yes.
you've been writing is that, like, where's that line? There's connectivity, but then there's these laws, these weird.
Yeah. So absolutely. I think you touched on something so interesting about the American experience of being an American in a colonial place. So that was the thing that I just found so unique about my family's history, which is that they didn't fit the stereotype and my perception
Mm.
um, of colonial literature, I guess, specifically British colonialism in India.
Mhm.
And I, at first, the book kind of asks, and the Hintons kind of see themselves as somewhat neutral because A, they're American, so they aren't really like accepted into British society. There's a British club that they aren't
That's
allowed to
our
be
life,
members
man.
in. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
This is wild.
Yeah, and so but not only that, like they are not very wealthy by white
Mhm.
foreigner standards in India, so they have this like kind of dilapidated house. They can only afford one servant. They have this jalopy car. They are, they're American missionaries, so they aren't public servants to British rule there. So and they kind of, at least like with my family's autobiographies, like one thing that struck me so much was how earnest they were in how they connected to the Indian people that they worked with.
Mm.
So they stayed there for 30 something years.
Wow.
They stayed a very long time and were quite committed to their faith there. And one thing that was so interesting was that it's very difficult to, at the time, it was difficult to convert Indian people to Christianity because those who did were often ostracized by other Indian people. So my family actually like didn't really have much success in converting numbers, I guess. So they would go to this tribe of Kora people who are a type of native Indian people in Bengal. And instead of, just immediately coming and passing out Bibles and baptizing people, like my great grandfather would just go to the village and play his bamboo flute, and just kind of caused this little moment of curiosity among the people and to kind of just connect with them on a very human level of music and enjoyment
Mm,
in that way. And he wasn't even at first like teaching about God. And even when he did finally like start to, to preach, the people still like kind of referred to him as like this crazy preacher and like didn't like, but in a kind of a loving way. Like, they still didn't like they weren't like fully on board with like the Christianity message, but the people like
mm,
seemed to have a positive connection to my family members just as human beings who were just kind of this oddity, this like kind of weird American family who
mhm,
would come and just like play the flute and, and speak with them and connect with them in that way. So, um,
mhm.
all this
Yeah.
to say is that I was just kind of struck at how their American experience just didn't match my perception. It just challenged my perception of colonial literature, I think, that I had read before. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because we felt like outsiders on all of it. You know what I mean? And,
Hmm.
and I think there was only one American family that we knew, and then some European families, which were a little different than the British families. European families were more like flamboyant, more open, accepting. The British were like ring the bell. Sorry to all my
Yeah.
British friends, but dudes, come on. I'm just saying, you know, and it was, son, yeah, anyway, I'll behave,
Yeah,
but
and you see that in my book in Sleeping the Sun. Like the boys are like they're American athletic boys and they're kind of rough around the edges and they're dusty and they don't care about, having like combed hair and all that. And compare that to some of the British children in at the end, there's a big kind of sports games where all these different backgrounds
mm,
get together. British Americans, Anglo Indians, and Indians, they all kind of compete in
wow.
this kind of put on show of like camaraderie. And you see that like you kind of see that the British people are a bit more, buttoned up, and then the Americans are, rowdy and kind of free to
Yeah,
be
they
how they
look at
want.
us like,
Yeah.
you're just so slack. You're kind of loose, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
and my mom being a single mom, that was a whole other, deal over there.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
That's
a
very
big deal.
interesting.
It was a very big deal on all levels. No matter what culture, it was a no-no. But this is interesting
Mm.
that you're seeing all these different sides. So were they playing cricket? Did they play
Oh
cricket?
no, it was a track and field kind of thing. And that was
Okay.
that was a
That
real
was a
real
big deal
event.
back then too. Yeah. Track and
Hmm.
field is
Yeah.
huge also in the colonial, sides, but
Yeah.
this is so amazing you're doing this because it's also again, like I said, it's not just your family story. This is a novel that is
Right.
taking place with other characters and just you're getting all these nuances in it. Did you just kind of like delve into your family history? Did you do like family trees and all of that thing that people do on ancestry.com and all that stuff? Not giving them a shout out. I'm just saying like people go down that rabbit hole.
It wasn't really so much about that. I think I kept my research. I tried to just keep the story's scope a bit tight and just kind of about this one season, this one family, and I didn't need to feel like I had to lay out like the whole lineage from generation to generation. And actually, they were the first generation and the only generation, as far as I know, to be missionaries in India. So yeah, so there really wasn't a factor of like genealogy going into it. Yeah, I just kind of kept to
It was
the
the
family members
inspiration,
there.
kind of
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
inspiration and the textures and the
Yeah.
story. Like the story is the story, but but everything's accurate, like historically, right?
Right, right,
Hmm.
right. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
I
cool
think
thing.
to me like the my favorite books, and they said this like in my MFA program, like the best books are the ones that have something like universal at its core that you could
Hmm.
take out of whatever book it was, whatever
Hmm.
time period and place, and put it somewhere else and it should still resonate. And I really kind of used that as like my guiding principle for this book
Hmm.
because I think like with historical fiction that's inspired by a person's family history, sometimes it can sometimes lean a little too personal where it might mean too much to the person and not be relatable to anyone else. So I was
Hmm.
conscious of that. I didn't want to fall into that trap. Yeah.
Yeah. So did it feel good getting it out? I mean, it just came out, literally. So
Yeah.
how did it
Yeah.
feel like birthing the baby?
So great. Yeah. So it came out last Tuesday, October 22nd. And then this past Friday was my book launch with all my favorite people in my local library. And
Oh,
I got up and
cool.
I shared some family photos of that time just to kind of bring the story to life because
Yeah,
there are so many like visual symbols that made it into the book that came from real life. So that was really
that's
cool to just
cool.
share with everyone. Yeah.
Now, do you think you'd like it to be in a movie or no?
Oh yeah, I mean that would be
Oh
amazing.
yeah.
I tried to write cinematically. I really felt like if
Mm-hmm.
as I was writing and going through rounds of
This has
editing,
to
like
be.
if I
Mm.
couldn't picture it in my mind, it wasn't done yet. So yeah, I tried to make it cinematic as possible.
I think historical fiction is cinematic. It has to be this
Hmm.
saga, the sweeping kind of takes you into another world. And because we don't care about dates, right? When you're reading historical fiction, unless you're a history fanatic who loves that kind of stuff, which there are definitely the
Yeah.
nuts and bolts people who love it. Not knocking it, man. I'm like, good power to you. Like, we need more of you in the world. But I think it for us, historical fiction plays such a huge role of telling the human story, the human interest, the reminding us of what humans have gone through and been through, and to be more gentle on each other, more forgiving. And some, yes, we have villains, right? We have bad people. You got questionable people, as you know, in our stories of history throughout, no matter what country, we're going to have those people. But it's how we deal with it, and it's those stories that I think help us get through and understand the past. That I don't know, novels are massive just for
Yeah,
people to
exactly.
have understanding, better than
Hmm.
school with your textbook of numbers.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up dates. There's actually no date in this book. There are a couple of things that if you pay attention, you'll catch them, and it will point to a frame of time that this takes place. But
Hmm.
I was actually purposefully a bit ambiguous about the exact year because there isn't a major historical event that takes place in the book, a real historical event. It's really more about bringing the time period to life in a kind of everyday sense and
Hmm.
just like you said, that like kind of human story. It wasn't so much like let me retell this historical event, this world event.
What we're missing in a lot of history books and school and stuff like that is that day-to-day life. How were people living? What did their
Yeah.
kitchens smell like from their cooking?
Mm,
How are
yeah,
they sleeping? You know what I mean? What were their rooms like? Did they have sanitary issues? Those kinds of things. I think
exactly.
all of that is that's how you know what people went through in life, good and bad
Yeah. And I think
and
that would
ugly.
appeal to more readers too,
Hmm.
to speak to the everyday human experience rather, because that's something that I think most people could relate to versus, if it was about
Hmm.
one specific historical event or person, then we would have to assume the reader who would pick up that book like wants to learn
Hmm.
about that, but someone who isn't interested in that like wouldn't give your book a chance.
Hmm.
So yeah, I tried to keep
Yeah.
it relatable in that sense.
Now, I know you've done other writing. What got you like focused on this, like to turn a career and go get a master's degree and everything on this? I mean, you're like, I'm going to go for writing. And most people go, dude, is there any money in that? We have AI now. Oh, dude, I don't even want to start on that.
Well, so I mean, it's not, I don't consider novel writing as a career. I don't think of this
Mm.
as like, the start of my novelist career. I am a
Oh,
copywriter professionally, so I am a writer by career, but novelist is a totally different thing. And I have some thoughts about like, wanting to keep it uh for the love of writing, I think, instead of because I need to make money. I think, I would rather
yeah.
keep it kind of pure like that. And something that I want to do and
Integrity.
I feel called to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because
With
you're
the
right, it
art.
is very tough to be profitable as a novelist.
It's
So,
the same thing for
but
musicians. To be able to do
mhm,
the art full time is like a hard thing, and then the art isn't fun
yeah.
anymore, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Yeah. I wanted to still
So,
love it, I think.
but copywriting, you're still writing. You're
Yeah,
still you're
exactly.
exercising those muscles and
Yeah.
creativity, and that's
Mhm.
cool,
Yeah,
Copywriting,
it's
the
a
world
different
wouldn't
skill
exist
set.
without it. It wouldn't exist. It wouldn't,
Yeah, so
especially now.
in my copywriting job, like so much of it is short form copy, and a lot of my job is like, how do I say this in a succinct way? And it's kind of the opposite of writing this novel, where I want to go further into detail and to bring this
Hmm.
thing to life. So it was I'm just all the way I was writing this book and working full time. So it was writing a lot, but it was kind of switching gears in that sense, like,
Mm.
shortening versus kind of lengthening in that
But
sense.
I think having a copywriter background helps you to not go too far as a
Yeah,
novelist, because you
exactly.
can,
Edit
because
myself.
yeah, you can,
Mm,
how long are you going to describe this outfit? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, you have to kind of still have that punch it in there, So I
Yeah,
think
that's very true.
copywriting's
I mean,
good.
yeah, the book is a bit on the short side. It's 288 pages. So yeah, maybe that is the copywriter in me, keeping it
Yeah.
short and sweet.
Hey, but that's cool. And I think more accessible to our younger generation now too, you know?
Yes, yeah,
I hate to
unfortunately,
say
the
that.
short attention spans.
Now listen, do
Yeah.
you have books, like paperback, hard copy books in your house? I have to ask this.
Oh, yes, I do. I actually do not own a Kindle. And I have several hundred books in my office. So I have a whole bookcase and I have piles of books on the floor that don't fit on the shelf. So yeah, I'm 100% a classic book lover.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so when you were writing, did you read novels and then go like, I better put this down so I don't like get too influenced, or does that matter since you're writing all the time?
No, I didn't really think of that. I am a big reader. I try to read a book a week, and no, I didn't really feel like I I had to be concerned, I think, about,
Mm,
picking up a different author's style or anything. No, I didn't really
mm,
feel that way. I actually read quite a
mm,
lot to help with the book. Just reading, for example, the biggest challenge I think for me was writing Arthur, who is an Indian servant. And, that's
mhm,
different from my own background. And
mhm.
currently in the book world, that can be a sensitive topic to kind of write outside your lane like that. So
Right.
I was doing a lot of research and reading different works by either about Indian characters that kind of back to or matched his background, or there were some nonfiction works that really helped inform his, kind of mentality and
Do you have to get a
experience.
sensitivity reader for something like that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I
Mhm.
did get a sensitivity reader, which I think is such an amazing tool these
Hmm.
days. You know, my misunderstanding about a sensitivity reader at first was that I thought they were going to like check my research kind of, and it didn't make sense to me at first because I thought, I feel pretty strongly about my research. I feel quite confident in it, and like unless I can find someone who lived in 1930s Calcutta at the time, then like how could a modern day reader like know any better than what I researched? But it's really not about that at all. I completely misunderstood. It's really about, if someone from India or, from this background somehow read this story, is there anything in it that would be insensitive? Is there anything that I have a blind spot about the way that I write these characters or portray them? If there's any, stereotype or harmful kind of view like that.
Hmm.
And of course, I'm very happy that the sensitivity reader didn't flag
I
anything
know
like that. I
that's a
didn't
new
think they
thing,
would, but
but it's
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
new
yeah.
new thing, and I don't know if
Mhm.
readers know, like all readers know about that, but this occurs now, and I think it's like a whole different editor, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't believe that it's impossible to write about a different identity without care and respect and
Mhm.
compassion. So, but this is I think you can only do so much on your own, just researching. I think
Mm,
you can't lose in getting a
mm.
sensitivity reader to kind of
When you get a
check
sensitivity
freedom.
reader, are they looking at everyone you're writing about in there, or are they specific on who you're writing about? So, are like, is a sensitivity reader like, hey, I'm only handling, people from India, so now maybe I
Yeah.
need a sensitivity listener from what I say. Well,
Yeah, I
we're
think
in this generation, and it's an interesting time, and Lord knows I've, don't go listen to podcasts from before because years ago, because we probably said things, and it's not meant to be, and I don't think
Mm,
anyone's really coming from places meaning to hurt anybody. Of
hmm.
course, there's people who do, and they're not allowed on our
Right.
show. But
Mm.
it's about actually generating and fostering understanding between each other even more, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, my sensitivity reader like had a background in India and Indian
Okay.
culture. So, but if I had someone who, maybe was disabled or,
Hmm.
non-binary or something, like then I would find a different sensitivity reader to read for
Okay.
that.
Just for that. Wow, this is so cool
Yeah.
though, isn't it? It's cool. We
Yeah.
have all
It's
kinds of
a
new
it's a
things
it's a
this year.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a good one. It's a good one. Now,
Mhm.
are you going to do another one? Another
Oh,
novel
I
kind of?
definitely hope I have several more books in my lifetime. But I think in terms of like a sequel to this book, no, I don't think so. I'm very happy with the ending.
Mm.
And I think, not everything needs a sequel. I think sometimes books are best just by themselves.
It depends. I think sometimes when you have those huge family sagas, like, Wilbur Smith, I don't know if you ever read any of his books. He would just these families would go on and on and on. And it's almost becomes like a soap opera book style. You know what
Mm,
I mean?
yeah.
So there's those, but yeah, I hope you do more novels. And I love to see a younger generation of writers writing historical fiction because it tends to not happen that often from what
Mm,
we've experienced. Yeah, no, no, no. It'll end up being more memoir kind of biography kind of thing, but you don't see it as often as a younger generation, and even women writing historical novels, not as often. That's
mm.
actually
Well,
kind of a thing we've seen. Yeah,
I think that I'm just very lucky with my family like archives. Like I think there was just so much material to
that's
work with.
cool.
So yeah, that really helped me a lot. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us and congratulations on your
Yeah.
first novel. Everyone, happy Halloween and Diwali today because we're airing it on
Yeah.
this day. Not that this is a Halloween story, but well, we got it all connected there. But thank you for joining us. Go to joannehowardwrites.com. Keep up with her there. Go get the book. It's out now, and it's called Sleeping in the Sun, again by Joanne Howard. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, yeah, boo. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.